Hello, as you can see on my screen, I did over 52k euros, so that's even more in dollars, in profit in one single day with my brand Eve Curls. And in this video, I'll explain you exactly what might be even one of the most important factors to achieve numbers like this. So first of all, who am I? My name is Timothy Tambala. I'm the founder of the e-commerce brand Eve Curls. As you can see, it's a curly hair care brand. We have over 3,000 reviews with a 4.7 rating. It's a real brand, a real product, real inventory. Like here you can see a nice picture of my mother and my brother. We started this brand together. Here you can some pictures. You can see some pictures of myself about 4 years ago when I started. I was still packing orders. You can see me and my dad here just making the first products for our brand. But of course now we are. That's how it all started, and now we are at a much bigger scale than this, as you saw in the triple dashboard. And in this video, I'll explain you exactly what has brought us to numbers like this. And that is basically gross margin. Like the gross margin for your product is very, very important. And in this video, I'll go in full detail why it is important and how you can achieve good gross margins like we do with our brand. And by the way, if you're working on your own ecom brand, I have a free school community with lots of value for you. So check the link in the description. But with that said, let's get right into it. So first of all, what is gross margin? So gross margin is very simply said your revenue minus your variable cost. So kind of you need to look at it, okay, let's say you are selling €100 or $100 worth of products. Then you need to think about, okay, if I sell this, how much costs will I have which are directly linked to the selling of this product. So usually for most people, like in almost every brand, it would be the following. So you would get your revenue and then you will deduct your VAT, because of course with every sale you make you need to pay the government the value added tax. You need to deduct your transaction fees, as with usually it's around 2%, because on every sale you'll pay your payment providers a set transaction fee. So you'll make this cost every time you make another sale. Your product cost, like with every sale you need to deliver a product, so this cost of the product also moves with the amount of sales you have. And of course, every time you have an order, you need to ship it to your customer. So you have your shipping costs. And also, one point which a lot of brands don't include, but I would advise you to do it, is your returns. Because if you've been running your brand for some time, you will understand how many people will return your product on average. Because over time this won't really change. Of course, maybe if you improve your products, change your return process, then your return percentage might change. But for example, on average you could know, hey, around 3% of my customers who buy my product will return their item. So you know that you will have to refund their money. So let's say €100,000 or $100,000 in sales, you know 3% of that you need to refund people. So basically you can already deduct 3% of this revenue as a cost, because you know this is not going to your bank account, this is going as a refund back to your customers. These are what's really going to be the main variable cost of your business, and that's how you get your gross margin. So again, your gross margin is just your revenue minus your variable costs, which is then VAT, transaction fees, product costs, shipping costs, and returns. And it is very important to understand this metric, because it impacts everything on how you do business. Now that you've understood what gross margin means, let's move to the next part. So now go over how and why gross margin is so important for your business. Because let's compare two basically almost identical businesses. They are selling the same product, they are running the same ads, so they are both competing to acquire customers, and they are having the same CPA. So both brands have an AOV of around $100. The only difference between these two brands is that brand A has a gross margin of 60% and brand B has a gross margin of 50%. So that means that if their average order value is $100, brand A will keep $60 after all these variable costs, which I explained here, and brand B will only keep $50. Then let's look at the following scenario. So both brands do 10,000 orders per month. And for both brands, it costs $40 to acquire a new customer. And yeah, so how is it, for example, even possible that brand A has 60% gross margin than brand B? Because they're selling the same product, right? Well, that's just because brand A did a much better job at optimizing their product costs, their shipping costs, their transaction fees. They invested time and effort to optimize this versus brand B, and that's why they're selling the same product and they're buying it for a cheaper price and they're delivering the product for a cheaper price to the customer. That's really the only difference between them. So that's why for the CPA won't be different because your customers, they don't know your gross margin and they don't care about that. If it's the same product, it will take the same effort for both brands to acquire new customers. So in this scenario, when they are doing both 10,000 orders a month and a CPA of $40, that means that brand A has a revenue of 10,000 orders times $100 is the AOV is 1 million per month. The gross profit of brand A is the 60% times 1 million, that's 600K. As I said, it costs for both brands $40 to acquire a customer. So the ad spend of brand A is 10,000 times $40. That's 400,000. So basically the contribution margin of brand A, so that's basically how much profit is left in the business after you've been deducted the variable costs and you've deducted the ad spend. So now we're not talking about, okay, let's say you have an office or you have a certain team members. No, we're not deducting these costs. We're just looking at your variable costs and your ad spend. The contribution margin is 200,000 euros per month for brand A. And for brand B, the only difference would be everything is the same. Revenue is the same. The ad spend is the same. The only difference is the gross profit. So because brand B has a gross margin of 50%, not 60%, they have a gross profit of 500,000. And because of that, their contribution margin is not 200,000, but 100,000. So you can already see both brands, they're selling an identical product, and just because brand A has a gross margin of 60% versus brand B of 50%, the contribution margin that brand A is making is double that of what brand B is making. That's why it's so important to have amazing gross margin, because you know what brand A can do? They have much more money now to invest into a good team, to do even better, to optimize further, because they have 200,000 of contribution margin to play with versus brand B only 100,000. Or another thing they could do is, brand A could say, hey, we are making such good profit, let's give up a bit of our profit, because they know their customers are going to come back in the future. So they could even not target a CPA of $40 a month, but maybe they say, let's go for a CPA of $50 a month. And that way they can spend much more on advertising and acquire much more customers. So they will get much more than 10,000 orders a month because of this. And that's how, brand A can beat brand B, because they have such a good gross margin, they can just outspend them. They can spend more because they have more room to play with. Because basically with an AOV of $60, 60%, $100, and then a gross margin of 60%, brand A basically makes a gross margin of $60. And brand B makes a gross margin of $50. So brand A can afford to spend $60 until they break even. Brand B, $50 to acquire a new customer too, until they break even. So you can see brand A is in a much better position. And just a simple illustration like just shows you already how just in this situation brand A would make double the profits of brand B. That's why gross margin has such a big impact, because having a better contribution margin gives you a huge opportunity to reinvest into marketing or into your team or just make more profit in general. It will have a huge impact. Okay, so then you might be thinking, all right, so how do I improve my gross margin again? Because of course, it's very easy to say, of course everyone wants a higher gross margin. Of course everyone would like to be brand A with 60% gross margin and instead of brand B with 50% gross margin. But how do you get to this point? What steps can you take to improve your gross margin? Well, one of the first things you can do is remove all useless features of your product basically. So let's say you're selling a flashlight. But with your flashlight, you're putting it in beautiful packaging, a very expensive premium box. and this box, you're also making it in a amazing custom color. And then besides that, you put this premium box in another shipping box. So you're already investing so much into packaging, which makes your cost much more basically. And so your product just cost is much more, which could be okay though. I'm not saying don't invest into packaging, but I'm just stating an example. Let's say you are this brand was investing heavily into packaging. Then you need to think, okay, because what you're selling is a flashlight. So why are you adding these elements, for example, to your product? Or it could be a packaging, it could be other features of your product. But it only makes sense to add a feature to your product if it does one of the following things. So first of all, it could be that it lets you charge a substantially more for the product. So let's say if you have amazing packaging and you also, your customers see that, people on your website see that has amazing packaging, because if they don't see it, like, it doesn't even make sense. But so if they see that it has this amazing packaging and everything, if having this amazing packaging or maybe another feature, like maybe some special flashlight which has more voltage or higher or a long-lasting battery, if that lets you allow to charge more for the product compared to your competitors who don't have this feature, then it might be a good idea. But if your customers don't care about it, if they would see, okay, flashlight has this battery life and this flashlight has this battery life and this packaging which is better, but honestly they don't care about it and they just go for the cheaper one, then you're already seeing, okay, you're adding elements to your product which customers really don't care about. Because if they care about it, it means that, for example, you would be able to charge more for the product. Or another thing which could be do is that maybe it will reduce your CPA, because of adding certain features, your product is better, or it makes it more special, and because of that, it is easier to advertise your product. So you think about it, say, hey, if I add this feature to my product, will it reduce my CPA? So will it make marketing more easy? If you would remove this element, it would have no impact on your marketing, then probably you added a useless feature. And also another metric which could be, so it could be that your features you're adding to your product do not let you charge substantially more for the product and do not reduce your CPA. But then it could be that adding certain features like nice packaging, for example, that it improves your retention. Because maybe if you know that you're selling some clothing, for example, and you know that if you would put it in a very basic standard bag, that only 10% of customers will come back because they just don't have this nice packaging experience. But if you maybe invest a bit more into packaging, and you know that because of adding this nice packaging, your retention would, for example, increase from 10 to 20%. This might weigh up for the increase in cost you make to buy this nicer packaging. So that is also something you could do. But then again, you need to think about it. So if you have this feature, because if you're thinking about it, like, hey, I'm making nice packaging because I want to improve retention. Well, maybe I could advise you, well, try to just remove the nice packaging box you have and just check your metrics. What changes to my retention? Does my retention decrease? Because if it doesn't decrease, then it just matters. It's a useless feature. So really try to think about it in this context. Once you add feature to your product, think about it. Does it let you charge more for the product? Or does it help you with marketing because it reduces your CPA? Or maybe does it improve retention? Because if it does not do any of these 3 points, then you just added a useless feature to your product and you're just increasing the costs for no reason. Because think about it, it's also better for your customers by just deleting some elements. Because if you're deleting not important elements of your product, your cost will also decrease, and you could in fact just charge less for your product because your costs are lower. So that would even be better for your customers as well, as they don't care about these features. So really, that's a quick, easy win you can make to improve your gross margin. Just truly look at your product. What does it consist of? And look at it, what can we scrap? If we remove this part, what elements can we remove and it won't really impact the business? Take a look at it from that point, and that might be how you could already improve your gross margin straight away. And another thing which you can do is just negotiate better product cost and better shipping. So let's say you're selling this flashlight as the example which I've given. Maybe in the beginning you're trying to launch fast, you got your first manufacturer. If you got some proof of concept, you're trying to get some volume. That means you get leverage over your supplier because you're becoming a big client of theirs. So try to negotiate with them. Try to ask, hey, now I order only 1,000 units. What if I increase my order to 10,000 units? How will the cost decrease? Or you could even ask them as well, be cooperative. Ask them, hey, what changes can we make to the product or in our way of doing business, which could lead to a lower cost? Because, for example, what could happen is, let's say you're selling cosmetics. So for a cosmetic manufacturer, you can sell cosmetics in different forms. You can have, for example, a bottle, which then the product, it gets filled into the bottle. Or maybe you could sell a tube. Like, that's what we're doing with our brand. We are selling our products in a tube form. First, we were selling it in a jar, basically. So in a jar, the product would be filled in a jar, but these jars would have to be closed manually. And a tube would usually be filled by a machine and could be closed by a machine. So just because of changing the packaging, it would make the process for the manufacturer much more efficient. And because of that, they could reduce their pricing to us. By asking your manufacturer, hey, can we change anything to our product in our packaging or the way we're working with? Can we change anything which would help you to reduce your price which you're charging me? So that's something you could do already with your own manufacturer now. That's how you can already get a cost decrease. Another thing which is very important to do is to reach out to other manufacturers. Like, once you've got some volume, you are a very attractive client. So again, if you're selling this flashlight at a flashlight manufacturer, reach out, I'm saying, to like 50 manufacturers. Just have a template. Just have a simple template, because they're going to waste your time. Make an Excel sheet with their name, with the name of the manufacturer, their contact person, their contact address, and then already like prepare like the cell. This is the minimum order quantity for them, and this will be the cost per flashlight. Like, in the beginning you don't know because you didn't ask them yet, but first prepare the sheet with all the different manufacturers, and then you just make like a nice message. And of course, like you won't have time to go visit all of them because you need to be efficient. So what I would advise you is to first prepare like a nice message, which would just say something like, hey, I am the owner, I'm the founder of this brand. We are selling flashlights. We've grown from this to this, and we last year, for example, we've already sold this amount of flashlights, and in the following year I expect these volumes. And I'm looking for a new flashlight manufacturer because we're looking to switch from our old one. But before we go into further, so say this is very important. Tell them that before we go into further detail, that you would first like to get an estimation, a quick estimation of like the price that they can offer you. So quickly explain, look, you need the product with these and these and these elements so that they know what it is about, and tell them, please. So tell them, for example, how many orders you would buy. Tell them then, please, can you give me a price for this amount? Tell them that, you don't want to go into further detailed communications and meetings, but you first just want to get the price. And once you're happy with the price, then you will go into further detail, because that way yourself and the manufacturer, you can tell them, you will both not waste your time. You can indeed see, is there some potential in there, and then you go into detail. And also tell them, like, you don't need to get an exact price, just some rough estimation. Just ask this to 50 suppliers, and you'll see they will give very different numbers. Like, probably half of them won't even reply, but then you have still 25 left, and they will give you very different numbers. And then you already see, all right, these ones have the best price. Then you pick, for example, 3, and there you ask samples, and you go further, and you go into further negotiations with the price. And then you can like let them bid against each other. Tell them, hey, but I got this manufacturer told me this price, and this one told me this price. And that's how you can just invest, especially if you're starting to do some volume. Take on this job of like 1 month, especially if you've never done this, of like 1 month of contacting everyone, optimizing it, trying to get prices. And let's say you're buying this flashlight for €3. I'm sure you'll be able to get it for €2, or maybe even lower, maybe even €1, just because you haven't put much effort into it. So that's a way how you can just drastically decrease your product cost. First, by negotiating with your own supplier, communicating clearly with them, and first just looking at a lot of alternatives. For shipping costs, the exact same process. And there it's even easier, because most 3PLs, fulfillment centers, they are very similar. They're all doing the same thing. They're just getting your product, putting it in a box, stamping a label on it, and shipping it to the customer. So there you can even easier to negotiation. Just reach out to them, tell them your volume, ask them the price. Once one gives you a price, show it to the other one. Look, I got this price already, so if you don't go lower than this, I won't get it. He gives you a lower price, you show it to another one, he goes lower, and eventually you reach a point when they don't go lower anymore, and you just heavily optimize your shipping cost. It's that simple. And these are the parts which have a huge impact on your business. It sounds like a lot of work, but this is the stuff that really moves the needle. Because as I shown before, like let's say, so you are this brand. First you were brand B. You had a gross margin of 50%. And now because of you made these improvements, you deleted useless features, you improved your product cost, you improved your shipping cost, and your gross margin basically went from 50 to 60%. You'll see the difference. Your monthly contribution margin literally goes from $100,000 to $200,000 a month if everything else stays the same. Your marketing stays the same, everything is the same, and you'll basically double your monthly profits. That's really the impact that this makes. The conclusion of this video is that good gross margins is key to succeed long term. And do not only focus on improving your ads, but make sure to reduce your cost as well, because as I've just shown, it has impacts your profits drastically. As I mentioned previously, I have a free school community where I give even more value, all for free. So make sure to check the link in the description. And thank you for watching. This was the video. If you're interested in any other topics for me to talk about, because I'm going to make a lot more videos in the future, make sure to mention it in the comments. And with that said, like and subscribe, and see you all in the next video.